Hey guys, welcome back to the Disclosure Team YouTube channel. So this is a pre-recorded interview with Dr. Lynne Kitei, author of The Phoenix Lights, witness to the Phoenix Lights, producer of the documentary on the Phoenix Lights. She has worked tirelessly for many, many years on bringing this particular case forward to the public, and she has done fantastic work. So I hope you enjoy it. One thing I will just preface is that there were some audio issues which we sort of got around by me basically not talking at all. Dr. Kitei goes through a presentation. You'll see me nodding a lot and things. It's because there was feedback coming from her end, which was just unfortunate. It happens sometimes. So we kept my talking to a minimum, so there was no feedback coming through, and it's a good thing because all we want to do is listen to the guests on these interviews. So guys, thank you so much for being here, and yeah, enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the Disclosure Team channel. I am here. I'm honored to be speaking to Dr. Lynne Kitei today about one of my favorite all-time cases in the UFO subject, and that is the Phoenix Lights from 1997. Welcome, Dr. Kitei. Thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm thrilled to be able to share the rest of the Phoenix Lights inside story, because there is so much mis and disinformation out there. One of the main reasons I came forward after 7 years of anonymity, after seeing 2 years prior to the mass sighting, which we'll get into, a very close sighting that I happened to get 35 millimeter photographs of. In fact, I'm the only person that we know of that has 35 millimeter pictures of these anomalous aerial phenomena. And the mass sighting, which we'll talk about in detail, has actually become the most witnessed, most documented, and most important mass anomalous aerial sighting in modern times, if not all of times. And I'm thrilled to be here today to tell the rest of the story, because there's so much mis and disinformation out there. Yeah. In fact, going back, I don't know if you have a question or if you want to share how I came to be here. But my background, actually, which is ironic, is not only a medical doctor, and I've tried to be as scientific as I can with the data, as well as a physician, to let people know that they're not alone. Most anomalies can be explained, only a small percentage cannot. But just because we don't have the technology yet to definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. We may just be looking on the AM dial for an FM frequency. And certainly as an experiencer, as you will hear, I knew how that felt. Even though most anomalies can be explained, when someone has a paranormal experience, it's real to them. And if you don't share it, and that was another reason I came forward to say, well, I'm here if you want to share, whether it's on the Phoenix Lights Network website, which is packed with information, by the way. If people want to go there while we're talking, they can actually see some of the data that is there. It is packed with information. The 35 millimeter photographs, the unique collection of photographs that I've collected prior to, during, and after the mass sighting of March 13th, 1997, as well as we'll talk about the different crafts that people saw, as well as the news reports. And it's very cathartic when people share. So whether it's on Facebook, we have the Phoenix Lights Network page there, as well as Phoenix Lights Group, or through the website. You can contact me right on top. Just sharing with one person is healing. Yeah. And certainly as an educator, actually, ironically, again, for 40 years, actually almost 50 years now, on the reality of vital health issues. I started at NBC in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, doing health reports because I thought it was important. No one was doing it at the time, to let the public know just short little bites of how to prevent a heart attack, or what to do if you have a burn, etc., which grew into a syndication that was actually showing here in Phoenix, Arizona, when we moved here in 1980. And I started doing health tips here for NBC and then USA Cable, and started a company in '85 to produce video and workbook curriculums on vital health issues like AIDS and teen pregnancy and substance abuse prevention education. for the classroom, won all kinds of awards. Discovery Education was distributing it for decades. And here this falls into my lap without any interest or knowledge in the topic. That's really important to note, because I really didn't want to do this. I was chosen this topic. It actually chose me, I guess, because here, 2 years before the mass sighting. Well, first I want to let the audience know, and this is just a little aside for you, Vinnie, which is kind of fun. My other hat before I went to medical school was in professional musical theater. I toured with Gordon McRae in Oklahoma, and Betty Grable in Guys and Dolls, and understudied Barbara Eden in The Sound of Music, and a whole host of others. But one of the things that's really poignant and coincidental, and I don't believe in coincidence anymore, is that 10 years before the mass sighting, we'll get into the whole thing with the mass sighting, I promise. But your viewers might enjoy learning this little tidbit. 10 years before the mass sighting, I actually appeared in the movie Raising Arizona, the Coen brother hit movie Raising Arizona, starring Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter and John Goodman and Frances McDormand and a whole host of other amazing people. I played the mother of the quintuplets. For anybody that's seen it, it's a Black comedy where Holly Hunter and Nick Cage actually kidnap one of the babies, the quintuplets, because they can't have their own. And after that happens, there's a press conference in front of our home. And one of the reporters sticks a microphone in my husband's face and says, "There's a rumor that your son has been abducted by UFOs. Is there any truth to that?" And my husband says, "Oh, please, son, please don't print that. If his mama reads that, she'll lose all hope," which is totally opposite from my own take, by the way. There is not another mention of UFOs in the entire film. This was 10 years before the mass sighting. Little coincidence, but even more, the cinematographer, and everybody was just getting started at the time. I think Nick Cage had done a couple movies before, but even the cinematographer, that was one of his first big films. But he went on to do When Harry Met Sally and Big with Tom Hanks, and How the West Was Won, and The Addams Family, and whatever. He also created and directed the Men in Black series, which the first one opened in 1997, the year of the Arizona mass sighting, which is kind of, whoa. Anyway, thought you might like that little tidbit. So there was a host of serendipities, which, again, now I've come to not believe in coincidence anymore. But the first one, actually, there's a 5-minute little report on the Phoenix Lights Network, thephoenixlights.net, for anybody that's interested, to go to the news page, and we can show that slide first so you know which one it was. It's Dr. Lynne Kitei. Most people call me Dr. Lynne since 1976 because it was a lot easier. But it's pronounced like a key and a tie. Anyway, this particular decade's show on CW was wonderful. We can't show it because of copyright, but it kind of shows how the story unfolded, which I'm going to share with you today personally. If we go to the next slide, this is a topography from our home. Again, I don't have to do this, but I need to do this. I really needed to come forward because the data was just too important not to share after 7 years of anonymity after the mass sighting. But the view from our home, so people can get a feel for what we were looking at. And actually, again, it's on the photo page of the Phoenix Lights Network website, if you want to take a peek there. You can see that there is a car with lights reflecting on the street in the lower left bottom corner, which is important. I showed this picture because it shows how cars and other lights glare or reflect. The unknowns, the true unknowns, do not. They're self-contained, and we will get to that. To the right of that car is a line of skylights in a home. That's significant. Yeah, that's significant because if you look straight up, you're going to see two mountain ranges. South Mountain and many miles back are the Estrella Mountain Range. And there's a basin in between. And by the way, that's significant because these anomalous aerial phenomena, once I had compiled the unique collection for a while, I noticed that these anomalous aerial phenomena keep popping up right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. Here's another little coincidence. 6 months before the mass sighting, I was invited to present my substance abuse prevention education program to the one school that they have at the Gila, Gila, Gila Bend Indian Reservation, which is very sacred ground. And after the mass sighting, and I helped out the principal, they don't talk to outsiders. They don't make a practice of that, but I helped them out, and I called the principal and asked him, did anybody happen to see strange lights on March 13th? Because these lights keep popping up right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. And he started to giggle. And I said, is that funny? And he said, are you kidding? We've been looking up at them for centuries. We call them sky people, light beings. I had no idea. I had never heard of that. In fact, that was the first I had heard of the fact that indigenous cultures, so fascinating, worldwide, are very open to other intelligences coming to visit us. In fact, the Hopi and others right here in Arizona have protocols to invite these intelligences in. And some of them believe that these orbs that we're going to be talking about are actually spirit world or ancestors coming to give them guidance and knowledge and comfort and inspiration. And I have to admit, Vinnie, I've been inspired to do this. And as I go on, I get more and more passionate. But the fact is that they are very open to these. There's no fear. There's actually joy with these phenomena, which we're going to get to with the Phoenix Lights, because it's very similar how people reacted. At any rate, 1995, another little coincidence, you want to call it that, the eve of my birthday. So it was a kind of a really cool gift to tell you. This is when it all started for me. Again, my husband's also a physician, healthy skeptic, got to see it to believe it. And you have to be open to anyone coming through the door as a physician. But here I am in a room adjacent to our bedroom. And as you saw with the topography, one wall of the bedroom is a window. So whatever pops up out there, whether it's haboobs, these dust storms that come across, or a fire, or the lights. I mean, we're very familiar with car lights and street lights and planes and so forth, because we're looking south towards Sky Harbor International Airport. Anyway, I'm in the bath in a room adjacent to the bedroom. My husband's standing at this window talking to my mother-in-law, who called to wish me a happy birthday from Philadelphia. And suddenly, and he was on several state and hospital medical boards, nothing ever ruffled his feathers. And suddenly he sounded alarmed. He says, oh my God, what the hell is that? Get over here quick. I grab a towel, go running, rigging wet to the window, and hear a little blow. It's because we're really high on the mountain in Paradise Valley. We're kind of nestled in the mountain range. It is a no-fly zone, so there is no way this was military. And we're gated as well, because the first thing I see are these 3 amber orbs in a pyramid formation, one on top and 2 closely aligned underneath, a little below us. And it's very treacherous desert landscape, and it's gated. And I looked underneath, and it was just black, because I thought maybe somebody was creating it, although it was very dangerous to be there. Total blackness. And my first thought was to run downstairs to get my video camera, because I collect, I do video work for curriculums, but it was downstairs. And you'll hear from many people who have had a paranormal experience similar to these. You don't want to move, because you don't know how long it's going to last. So I try to take everything in mentally, the size, the shape, the color. They were about 3 to 6 feet each, depending on how close they were. They were definitely oval shaped, which is really interesting now that the Navy Nimitz pilots have come forward just in the last couple of years to describe what they've seen as tic-tac shape or lozenge shape. I don't know if it's the same phenomena, but nonetheless, they were oval shaped. They were a uniform amber color throughout, very soothing, very mesmerizing. I noticed every other light out there glared. Street lights, car lights, house lights, whatever. These did not. And I call them an orb because the light did not extend outside the edge. It was self-contained. As you can see with the car, it's not self-contained. It reflects onto the ground, and most other lights reflect out. Okay. And I thought to myself, okay, if I don't get a picture of this, no one's going to believe it. So I go running to the closet. I collect sunsets. And if you go on the photo page at the Phoenix Lights Network website, you'll see at the bottom 2 sunsets with actually huge cylindrical cigar shaped, maybe motherships. I don't know. We've had them analyzed and they're definitely anomalous. But at any rate, I collect sunsets. So I go to in the closet to grab my cheap Canon Instamatic 35 millimeter camera. My husband calls me back. He says, "Get over here quick. One of them is disappearing." And as we both watched in utter awe and wonder, the top orb, without budging from the 2 underneath, and I really took note of this. We have 2 sons, and the only shows and movies we ever saw were E.T., Close Encounters, they're in their 40s now, and the original Star Trek series. So immediately I thought the Romulan cloaking device, because it wavers, these did not. But it felt like it was cloaking. It is so difficult to describe in logical terms. The top orb started to shrink mechanically, as if there was an intelligence behind it, slowly and slowly, like a dimmer switch almost, until it was a pea size and then disappeared. But it still felt like it was there. Where did it go? I get out on the balcony, immediately noticed an eerie silence, as if time had stopped. It was just bizarre. And took a quick picture of the 2 lower orbs. That's the next picture, I believe. There you go. Okay. If you look on the bottom left, that's the 2 lower orbs. Okay. And I did not admit this to a soul for 2 years, till after the mass sighting. But as intently as I was watching these 2 lower orbs, it felt like something was watching me. And going through my mind at that exact moment, I thought, who are you? What are you? Do you know that I'm here? I'd love to meet you. And the next thing I remember, the left bottom orb started to shrink, just like the top one did. And something told me to take a picture. I immediately took a picture of that. That's the next picture. And you can see that these orbs not only moved, but miraculously, I caught one orb half disappeared while it was shrinking, and one's still there. But I didn't even know who to show it to. I knew nothing about the topic, knew no one who was. But I'm going to skip ahead a little bit before we get to the mass sighting. 3 years later, a year after the mass sighting, there was another sighting. And if anybody has Amazon, on Amazon Prime, we have our award-winning documentary, The Phoenix Lights Beyond Top Secret. It keeps evolving, so there's several different versions there, but that's the latest one. And if you take a look at that one, in there we actually have footage of this 1998 amazing sighting that I had alerted the other people to, because the lights had not come back for a whole year. And January of 1998, through a fog, which is very rare in Phoenix, I have to tell you, I saw 2 muted, orbs, and I thought, whoa, is that the Phoenix light? And I had already met with the University of Arizona. They said I better get a better camera, and I ran out the next morning and got a high-end Pentax camera with a tele-lens and a star filter and all that. The next night they came back, and I got amazing pictures. And I happened to have a meeting at Village Labs, which was a clearinghouse here locally, big computer lab, and told them to get people on the ready. They might come back a 3rd night, which they did. And we had, coincidentally, people from the mass sighting who had gotten video, north, south, east, and west, on the ready. And we all caught a 40-mile wide, 20-minute array of straight lines and mirror images. And the final thing was a giant pyramid triangle. I mean, it was just amazing. And we got it from 4 different locations, which was different than the mass sighting. And I'll get back to that, because people took video, but different times and different formations. This was the same formation at the same time. And I had been told to contact Navy optical physicist, Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who is very well respected in the field. And I finally did. And this is 3 years after the mass sighting. And I sent him the video from the 4 of us. And as an afterthought, I sent that first and last picture to ask him, what does he think those close orbs are? Now, if we can go back to the first picture, Okay. If you notice, and he calls me 2 weeks later and he says, you told me that closed sighting was only a couple minutes. I said, right. He said, are you sure? I said, that's what I remember. He said, ask your husband. Interestingly, he was inside. I was outside taking the pictures. He wouldn't talk about it. He would get agitated when I brought it. It didn't make sense because to me it was wondrous and awesome and amazing. He would not talk about it. Everybody comes from a different background, from a different upbringing, from a different belief system. Some people can't deal with this topic. Some people don't want to, and that's okay. Everyone in their own time. But he said to me, you have to confirm that you both saw the same thing. So I sat him down. I said, look, we don't have to talk about it, but tell me how long do you think that 95 sighting was? He says, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 minutes long. I said, okay. I go back to Dr. Maccabee. He says, that's impossible. I said, what do you mean? He says, first of all, and he was the first one to notice it, if you see at the top of the picture, there's an arrow at 4 lights there, okay? That's the same exact anomaly in the same exact location that I would also capture 2 months before the mass sighting that we'll get to and during the mass sighting. So it was there in 95. There were also, during the mass sighting, people that described these orbs detaching from the main object, going out into the environment, and then redocking with it later. Is that what happened in 95? I'm here to say I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. I'm just sharing the data. The data speaks for itself. You decide. Okay. But meanwhile, there it is. This is 35 millimeters. It's in the negative. Cannot be explained or denied. What's interesting in the next one, he also noticed now there are 2. As the orbs are disappearing close to us, so are the orbs in the background. But he said that's not the most important thing. Go back to the first one. He's pleased. Thank you, Vinnie. He says the most poignant thing to him was that he noticed, and I would have never noticed this data in a zillion years, that there were many lights, groups of lights, not just individual lights, on in the first picture that are off in the last picture. He says that doesn't happen in just a couple minutes. He says, I want you to do an experiment. He was very meticulous with his analysis. In fact, his 21-page report is on the Phoenix Lights Network website for anybody that wants to take a peek. And I also have some in the book. But he says to me, I want you to stand out on the balcony, approximately the same place you were standing in 95. And one night, take a picture of the skyline for every hour, the next night every half hour. I actually did another night every 15 minutes to see when these lights start going out. Now, I usually take a bath when we're home between 7 and 8 in the evening. So let's be conservative and say starting point is 8 o'clock. The lights started going out at 9 o'clock. The last picture is indicative of 10:30, 11 o'clock. And he says to me, can I present this case at the upcoming MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, International Symposium in Washington, D.C. that was coming up? I said, Dr. Maccabee, this is your baby. I would have never noticed this. But I was staying anonymous, and I mean anonymous, for 7 years. Only a handful of people knew what I had, because I wanted to do my homework, find out what the heck was going on before I would come forward, right? And we'll get to that. There was a lot of ridicule and discrediting at the time. But at any rate, I said, as long as you don't mention who they're from, I want to stay anonymous. And he was kind enough, as were a handful of other people, to keep me anonymous until I came forward. He presents the case, and we can go to the next slide, if you would. And again, very meticulous. I mean, the top one are groups of lights. The bottom one are out, okay? And he did it again, by the way, several years ago for National Geographic, and with better software, higher quality, he found even more lights that were groups of lights that were on in the first picture, off in the last picture. He presented the case as the first, and as far as we know, the only authenticated photographic evidence of missing time. Now, wow. It took me a long time to come forward with this. Actually, it wasn't until the second edition of the book, like a dozen years later, because I still can't wrap my head around it. What I told you is what I remember. And the reason I am sharing it now, and I shared it then, was because we've come a long way. Quantum physics, quantum mechanics are now talking about 10 or 11 different dimensions. Not only is our concept of time, linear time, primitive, past, present, and future, time may not be that at all, okay? It certainly when I went out on the balcony, it seemed like time had stopped. So what the heck is that, okay? But also, if there are other times and spaces, I mean, string theory talks about 10 or 11 different dimensions out there. If there are other times and spaces along with ours, then why is it so difficult to surmise that there might be other sentient beings in those other times and spaces that we get glimpses of if we're open to them or invited? And that's the first step, is to be open, to at least listen to the data. And it's your choice out there, but the data is there now, including this data. Okay, let's move forward. Now, didn't see anything remotely close to these closed orbs in 95. And mind you, when we're in the bedroom and the big window that's one wall, when we're in there, we get to see whatever pops up out there. And I did look, okay, I admit, I did look periodically. Nothing, okay. Until 2 months before the mass sighting, January 22nd, 97. I'm lying in bed and I noticed 3 amber orbs in a row now, far northwest at a distance. But they're huge, huge amber balls. They're equidistant from each other. They're hovering for several minutes. Strangely similar to 95. And as I watched, they started to implode one by one from right to left. I don't know if that's significant, but that's the way they did. Mentioned it to my husband. He says, "Do I still have to go to work tomorrow?" That was his reaction. Okay. So the next night he was at a medical board meeting. And I happened to be in the bedroom near the sliding glass doors that are perpendicular to that big window that I had gone out to the balcony. And I noticed the same 3 orbs in the equidistant line formation are now in front of South Mountain. And I knew they were in front of South Mountain because there are blinking red lights on top of the mountain to alert planes coming into Sky Harbor, which is just in front of South Mountain. And I thought, okay, enough. I'm getting my video camera. So I run downstairs, and it was fully charged, by the way. I get out to the front of the house. I get about 18 seconds worth. It goes dead. I go inside. I plug it on. I go outside. It's about 8 o'clock. They're gone. About a half hour later, my husband comes up the drive, and we have a very long drive up the mountain. And I went outside and I said, "Honey, remember I told you about the 3 amber orbs far northwest last night in a line formation? Well, about a half an hour ago, they were right in front of South Mountain. As I'm pointing like this, they reappear in the same spot." It was like, whoa, I got to get a picture of this. And again, I don't believe in coincidence, because in this instance, video doesn't do the unknowns justice. They're much smaller, they're white, they flicker, even though for the trained eye, the formations are very compelling. In 35 millimeter, they're in the negative, okay? They can't be denied. So I run upstairs, I grab my 35 millimeter, I get out on the balcony. Just as I'm ready to shoot the 3, suddenly 6 lights pop on, equidistant from each other, massive span, over a mile wide, above the 3. We can go to the next slide. There you go. Which you can see it's wavy because I was shaking. It was so massive. And not having an explanation for 95, it was like, whoa, what is this? A mothership or a fleet? I mean, it was massive. But thank goodness I kept clicking away. The second picture is really significant. To me, it's a smoking gun. If we can go to the next picture. Okay, what we're looking at there, if you really analyze what we're looking at, is a V of 5 lights with 2 underneath. Well, after the mass sighting, thousands of people would come forward to say what they saw were 5 lights in a V with 2 trailing lights. This is 2 months before the mass sighting. What's that? Okay. And then the next picture, as the lights on the bottom started to disappear, the top formation, I was catching this on, head on, turned to a V shape, as you can see, right? Okay. And the last picture, which is also significant because If you look at that picture, and again, these have all been analyzed by military and university optical physicists and experts throughout the last 25 years, cannot be explained. They are true unknowns. And if you look, every one in between is smaller than the one, okay, closer.
Yeah.
So we're surmising that the big ones are the closer arm, the in between ones, lights, are the further away arm. Keep that thought, okay. Didn't sleep well that night. We can keep it on this for a minute. Didn't sleep well that night. Next morning, I wake up, I figure, look, again, I'm a healthy skeptic, got to be a logical explanation. And night before, by the way, after the lights disappeared underneath, I ran in and called the Arizona Republic, which is a big newspaper here, to say, get somebody out there quick. There's some strange lights in front of South Mountain before they disappear, and tell me what the heck they are. By the time I finished my sentence, they were gone. So I woke up the next morning. They were my first call. I said, did anybody happen to call last night to report strange lights in front of South Mountain? She got off. She got right back on. She said, nope, nobody called. I know I called. Okay. I said, well, my husband and I did see something unusual. How can I find out what it might have been? She said, well, sometimes Luke Air Force Base sends experimental maneuvers out and they don't tell the public about it. That sounds logical. But I wanted to follow up. So I called the Luke Air Force Base, which is not far from Phoenix. And I said, I try to be professional. My husband and I are both physicians. We live mountainside in Paradise Valley. We saw some strange lights in front of South Mountain last night. Could you tell me what they might have been? And from the get-go, she had an attitude. And she said, well, they didn't come in from Luke Air Force Base and they didn't come out from here, so we had nothing to do with them. I said, okay, be that as it may, we did see something. I even got pictures of it. I'm just trying to find out what it was. She says, well, you said it was near the airport, so maybe they saw something there. Now it was a mission. So I called the FAA, told the same thing to the operator. She was really nice. She says, maybe some of the air traffic controllers saw something last night. Let me check it out. Keeps me on the phone forever. Finally gets back on. She says, actually, there was a group of air traffic controllers who did see some strange lights over restricted airspace. And there are a couple that are here this morning. I said, oh, please, can I speak to one of them? That took forever. I mean, it might have been 5 minutes, but it seemed forever. I met the guy subsequently. Not only is he a meteorologist, which is significant, which I'll share, but he's a really low-key guy. He gets on the phone. He was more excited than me. Did you see those 6 lights over from each other? And at 8:30, like that. Actually, there were 3 at 8 o'clock. I said, yes, that's why I'm calling. He says, at 8 o'clock, we looked on radar when the 3 popped up because it was over Class B restricted airspace. And he confirmed that. There's a 30-mile radius around the center of the airport. Anything that comes into that airspace, particularly 1,000 feet altitude that these were, must call into the tower. And no one did. So they looked on radar, didn't show up on radar. They were alarmed. And then they disappeared. At 8:30, the 6 popped up. Then they were really alarmed. Look on radar, did not show up on radar. They took their high powers binoculars to look, and in their own words, they saw 6 points of light totally equidistant from each other, massive span, over a mile wide, that seemed to be attached to something. They couldn't quite see what they were attached to, or had a force field in between, holding them in rock solid formation. And again, he was a meteorologist and said that the entire thing turned against the wind, which is also significant because we hear the Navy Nimitz pilots saying that what they saw was against the wind. But nonetheless, this is what he reported. And then after it turned against the wind, in a unit, it elevated slowly and moved in synchrony, as he put it, behind South Mountain. So I said, so what was it? And there was silence. And then he said, beats me. I said, you're an air traffic controller. You're supposed to know what's in our airspace. He said the whole group ruled out every conventional aircraft, blimps, Chinese lanterns, flares, even skydivers with lights. Okay, they even thought maybe that's what they were. Every conventional, every possible thing that it could have been. We stayed in contact up and including March 13th, 1997, which I will get to in a moment. In the meantime, I continued photographing these things. And my husband was getting a little annoyed with me. We'd be in a conversation or whatever, and I see out of the corner of my eyes, I don't know what it was, but the scientist in me I had to go out and document it on film, right? So it was getting a little ridiculous, and he's saying, oh, it's a fire on the mountain and whatever. And again, I didn't know anyone that was involved with this topic at all. This is how close I was, Vinnie. A friend of a friend had a neighbor who had a friend who knew the past president of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. I had never heard of it at the time. I called him up. I said, I'm seeing these strange lights. Have you heard about it? He had not, but there were other people that were seeing it and documenting on a film, just like me. In fact, there was a fella, Steve Blonder, who was not only photographing them, but he called MUFON up to his balcony the night of March 13th, the night of the mass sighting, and they happened to catch an arrowhead of 5 lights. That's miraculous. I mean, if you look at his pattern, those lights are either attached to something or have a force field in between. And his video and my video, which we'll get to, were before 10 o'clock. There were a couple videos after 10 o'clock, which we'll discuss. But at any rate, and I said, I have a couple pictures. I have a picture. That was the only one that turned out at the time that I would love someone to analyze and tell me what it is. He refers me to a field investigator, MUFON field investigator, for the following Wednesday, who calls me up on Tuesday to say the state director of MUFON's mom had passed on Saturday. The funeral was Wednesday morning. Could we postpone? It was like, oh man, I really want somebody to look at this. The only window I had for another 2-3 weeks was Friday morning at 10 o'clock. He said, fine. I knock on his door. He opens the door. The first thing he says to me is, did you see the mass sighting last night? I said, well, I saw something similar to what I told you about 2 months ago. In fact, I actually got video of it. He said, great, because NBC was coming to interview him in a half an hour. I said, whoa. I said, I used to do health reporting for NBC. I said, I don't know if it's a hoax or military or whatever, but it's not about me. It's never been about me. It's about the data. So take a copy of the video, show it to whoever. I'm out of here. And by the way, I called the air traffic controllers this morning to see if they saw the same thing in the same location. They confirmed that it was the exact same phenomena in the exact same location, and that a couple pilots called into the tower. A commercial pilot on departure said, what the hell are these lights over me? And a private pilot, say that 5 times, private pilot called in to report the 6 lights in a V formation. Didn't know who that was, but nonetheless, they did. We'll get back to that. And I thought, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on? And I said, I'm out of here, and I left. That afternoon, I was in front of my big screen TV with the VCR on the ready to go. I didn't know if they'd cover it. The first news that came on like 4:30, whatever. Breaking news, okay, with my video. He gave it to everybody. And every news station was showing my video, which was exciting. I mean, I wanted people to see what we saw. I didn't know what they were. And to this day, I don't know what they were, but I know that they are. And that it's time we get this topic out in the open and address it and accept it and study it so we can find out not only who's driving these things, but move forward in our own evolution. But nonetheless, by 9 o'clock, there were a couple other videos, boomerang videos that were spectacular. Okay, that really took me back, because here I'm learning that thousands of people saw similar phenomena that I had been documenting for 2 years throughout the entire state. By the following Tuesday, I see that they're showing my video and they're interviewing this fella, Jim Delatoso, who has this color computer lab, huge, near Arizona State University, right here in Tempe, who also was studying UFOs for like 20 years on the side, showing the same exact phenomena. These orbs in triangle formation from Russia and UK and from Belgium. And it was like, whoa. And they're much more open, by the way, in other countries to these things being otherworldly. Yep. But nonetheless, I had no idea. I had no idea that this was happening worldwide. And that really set me on a journey that has brought me here to you today, because I pushed my whole medical career aside to try to find a logical source and meaning for what I had witnessed and photographed. I have yet to find it 25 years later, actually 27 from the 95 sighting. I started keeping an intricate diary of everything. I mean, I even felt an urgency to do this, which most people will tell you once they have a paranormal experience. And I not only researched, I mean, I knew nothing about this topic, and I couldn't believe the plethora of credible data out there from centuries ago. I mean, we don't have time to get into the history, but the documentary does, and I do in the book as well. But I mean, we're talking from the time human documentation began, primitive caves that have long extinct animals etched out on the wall have UFOs, what we would call UFOs in the sky, or Sumerian writings and India writings, even the Bible, Ezekiel's wheel. And you fast forward to the 15th and 16th centuries, and we have frescoes and paintings of people on the ground looking up at the sky at what I mean are blatant UFOs with beings in the UFOs. And then we fast forward again to 100 years before our mass sighting. There was also a mass sighting in Kansas, California, Washington, and Canada of what they called these massive airships with removable lights. Sound familiar? This was 6 years before the Wright brothers took flight. And then, yeah, and then, I mean, it's fascinating when you look at the history of these things. And then we fast forward and we have the Belgium sightings, and they are really a model for what should happen, because they got together with the military, civilians, scientists, universities to try to study these phenomena. France did too. They came up with a committee report, which really states that these things are real, that we need to study them. At any rate, not to get off the track, but these have been going on for a long time, and there's been sightings subsequently. And if you look on my photo page, you'll see I've captured quite a bit myself, but other places too, worldwide. This is a worldwide phenomenon. Okay, but we're going to get back to the Phoenix Lights, because the Phoenix Lights, as I mentioned, has become the premier case for these phenomena. And mind you, when I came forward in 2004, 7 years later, the accepted, okay, explanation were that they were military flares. We're going to talk about that. We've come a long way since 2004. But let me get back to March 13th, 1997, for anyone that doesn't know. And I'm going to tell you more details that you probably never heard today, because there's so much more to this story. While thousands of people were looking skyward for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet, which was very clear in the northwest sky that night, very calm, beautiful night, they also caught a glimpse of one to much larger. Peter Davenport, director of the National UFO Reporting Center, several years ago for the 20th anniversary, announced at a conference we were speaking at, I thought he was kidding, that one of these formations, we're talking orb formations as well as craft, which we'll get to, was 8 miles wide. It was like, what? Are you kidding me? No. I mean, he's gotten thousands of reports from people through the years. And not only, again, were there orb formations and rock solid V, triangle, boomerang arrays, but there were actual craft with gunmetal bottoms, even windows. People saw beings at windows that glided very slowly, rooftop level. Some people said they could have thrown a rock at it. It was that close. We have a pilot in the documentary who was under one of these orbs, or what he called a canister of spinning energy. And some people, the technology was incredible in and of itself. Some people saw these craft take off at blink speed, totally silent, no sonic boom, didn't disperse the air. I mean, the propulsion is just phenomenal, whatever it was. Some people actually saw it, well, actually, okay, to get back to the mass sighting, what most people probably heard from the media, and I understand where they made it simple, that it was only a couple hours, okay, because most people called and were outside looking up at the sky between 8 and 10. And that's when they called the news people and Luke Air Force Base or whatever, who denied that anybody called but a lot of people got their number of the National UFO Reporting Center from Luke Air Force Base. But anyway, so they kind of scrunched it into 8 to 10. But the truth of the matter and the data is that the mass sighting, and again, we were seeing it for weeks and months before, but the mass sighting day, March 13th, 1997, started at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. That was the first report that we've heard about. 5 o'clock hour, now here's where it really gets interesting. It was seen in New Mexico by Native Americans. 7 o'clock hour and beyond in California. In fact, there was a report at between 10 and 11, two commercial airline pilots, one left Phoenix on the way to California, and took years for her to contact me, and she always wanted to stay anonymous. But nonetheless, as they were approaching Las Vegas, they see one of these craft cover Las Vegas. And she called into the radar to find out they were pinging anything, and almost simultaneously, another commercial pilot said, "Oh my God, what the hell is covering Las Vegas?" And then another voice, a very authoritative voice, came on asking them details, and they got nervous, and she said, "We must have made a mistake." This is a little interesting story. As they're nearing 30,000 feet, with 140 passengers and crew, approaching California, suddenly they see a giant flare 30,000 feet to the right of the aircraft. Moments later, a military jet comes whizzing by them really close. And she said she almost jumped out of her seat. It was that close. She got really nervous and called her husband and said, "Don't answer the phone or the door." He thought maybe somebody was trying to give him a message. But nonetheless, that happened. Okay, that's what she reported. The sightings continued. And some people even saw discs, okay, until 5:30 the next morning. The last report I received personally from a Boeing crewman, an elderly fella, really credible, said that his entire crew was coming into Sky Harbor International Airport, and one of these mile-wide craft was hovering over their tarmac. So it was many more hours. It was over a dozen hours. It was many events happening. And, at 3 a.m. the next morning, and we have part of that recorded report from an alleged crewman called the National UFO Reporting Center, 3 a.m., to report in great detail, very professional, that military jets were actually sent out to intercept and get gun camera film, which I heard they did, but I haven't seen it, so I can't confirm. One of these craft was hovering right over central Phoenix. And as they got close, the lights dimmed and the entire thing blinked out and disappeared. Freaking out, one of the pilots, who this alleged crewman said he helped out of his aircraft because he was so shaken up by it. So they were well aware of what was going on, okay? But we're talking over a dozen hours, multiple things happening over 4 states, okay? A parade. Because the investigators actually interviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people from thousands of reports from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, from Arizona MUFON, who was receiving obviously many reports, Councilwoman Vice Mayor at the time of Phoenix, Frances Barwood, who was the only elected official who innocently asked for an investigation months later in May, because there was nothing after the mass sighting, nothing announced by the military or government. And she was plastered to the wall by the media. It was really cruel. I mean, anyone that came forward at the time, and that's a whole nother part of this whole story, was ridiculed and snickered at and laughed at and whatever. It was not a good time to come forward. I was so glad I was anonymous for 7 years. But nonetheless, not only that, but Village Labs too. All these reports, and 2 or more people had to see the same craft to be in the study. If you go to the GAP page, Geospatial Animation Project, on the Phoenix Lights Network, www.thephoenixlights.net website, you will see illustrations and animations. They're fabulous, by Larry Lowe, of 10 different craft. Now, whether it was one craft, and they really look different, one craft that could morph into looking different, this perspective from where the person was standing, or an actual parade, which was what the investigators, after 12 years of meticulously studying this data, concluded, because there were so many things happening at the same time. These orb formations, craft as well, and credible people saw these crafts. People try to poo-poo the craft. No, people were right underneath it. Okay, we have a registered nurse. Okay, who was right. He was standing right near a street light and saw the bottom like glistening, and some people said it was like looking through water, but he actually saw gunmetal and saw what he described as this canister, like a ceiling canister with like lava coming down. He thought it was going to hit him, but then it shot right up before it came out of the bottom. I mean, the descriptions are amazing. So anyway, here we go. Next picture is what I caught at 10 o'clock. This is a screenshot from the documentary, okay, which is pretty amazing, because when I first saw it, actually it was about 9:45, and as I mentioned, the arrowhead and my video were before 10 o'clock. And my husband and I are watching TV, and we see the, you know, how they do a promo about 20 of, quarter of, for what the 10 o'clock news is going to be. And we see a promo, and suddenly I notice, and this is on March 13th, 6 lights in a line, just like I had 2 months before, right? And I grab my video camera, I get out there, and I'm fumbling with it because it wouldn't focus. By the time I look up, there were 3 lights, okay? Like a giant mile-wide V, okay? So this is the video that I caught, okay? So, and I'm not sure what the next slide is. Just wait 1 second here. Oh, okay, go back. Yeah, okay. No, go back. Okay. No, there we go. Okay.
Sorry, that one.
I don't want to spoil it for anyone. Get ahead of myself. At any rate, as I mentioned, there was no investigation, no explanation for months. I mean, the only thing that happened was that Frances Barwood, the Phoenix vice mayor, asked for an investigation, and she was laughed at and ridiculed, and they made jokes in the paper and all that. Suddenly, on June 18th, we see a front page USA Today article. Now we can show the next one, which was a multi-page article divulging our mass sighting for the first time. Mind you, they had really kept a cap on it in Phoenix and Arizona. Okay, there was like a little article that appeared in the Arizona Republic, like in section B, page 8 or something. That was it. Okay, but here is front page, opening up to international scrutiny. In fact, we did not have social media at the time, and overnight it went viral. By the next morning, every morning show was carrying it in America. Peter Jennings, Dan Rather, it was the news of the day. And we were deluged by media from all over the world. And once they started talking to the witnesses, again, their descriptions were so detailed and so heartfelt that they too were asking, why isn't there an investigation? Why isn't there an explanation? The very next day, we get an announcement. I'm sorry. Yeah. The next day, we get an announcement. Oh, excuse me. I'm trying to get my thoughts. That late morning, after the day after the USA Today article, we get an announcement that then Governor Fife Symington was holding an unscheduled press conference, very unusual, okay, that afternoon, to divulge the culprit of the lights over Phoenix. And people took it seriously. And there were press, there were witnesses, whatever. And he comes marching out, one of his aides, with a giant alien head costume, and made a mockery of the mass sighting. It was really disconcerting, especially for parents that were with children that saw something that was 3-4 malls wide, and he's making a joke out of it. That kind of put a lid on it, I have to say, but not for me. I started calling all the military bases and asking them what they knew. Never told them any details about what I saw or what I documented on film. But their conversations, and I have a couple of them in the book, were comical. I mean, they were just as curious as we were. were begging me to meet with them to see what I had, right? And one of them even said, well, the only one who knows who did this is God and whoever did this. Huh? This is like one of the heads at the military base, right? A month later, I get a call from one of the heads of PR at the Air National Guard. And she says, oh, Dr. Lynne, I think we know what those lights were back in March. And I was thrilled. I said, what were they? She said, do you believe in all these months, no one ever looked at the log for visiting Air National Guard, and the Maryland Air National Guard was in town sending off flares, military illumination flares, and Operation Snowbird, which I later found out, by the way, in military terms means diversionary tactical maneuvers, okay, which they may have sent off flares. No one that saw the true unknowns described what flares do. Because I said to her, well, wait a minute. When was the Maryland Air National Guard in town? She said March 1st to the 15th. I said, were they in town in January? She said, oh, no. I said, are you sure? She said, absolutely not. I said, well, I said, both my husband and I witnessed, and I got pictures of the same exact phenomena in the same exact location 2 months before the mass sighting. And she says to me, you never told me that. And I said, besides, you're trying to tell me that flares that cannot keep a formation, they're drifted. I had educated myself to anything logical, including flares, drift and drop on parachutes haphazardly with the wind. They can only keep, if anything, information for a couple seconds, but then they drift and drop haphazardly to the ground. They have huge smoke trails that are illuminated by the flare itself, and they illuminate the ground, which not one person reported any of those characteristics. And I said, you're saying that flares that cannot keep a formation actually traverse the entire state in a rock solid, equidistantly spaced V formation for hours? And she says, I have a call coming in. I'll get back to you. I'm still waiting, Vinnie. Anyway, let me put this to rest once and for all. If we can go to the next slide. Here are the top row are true unknowns. Actually, the first picture is from Stephenville, Texas, which happened a year after our mass sighting. The middle one is one of my favorite pictures that I took 1 month after 9/11. There's a whole story of that I share in the book. And the third picture as well. The bottom are flares. Give me a break. They're nothing like the true unknowns. Not only that, excuse me, but to verify this, and again, if you go to the Phoenix Lights Network website and go on the news page and you scroll down to the AZ family square there, 3 years after the mass sighting, then Secretary of State Frances Barr, then Vice Mayor and Councilwoman Frances Barr was running for Secretary of State to get answers for the Phoenix Lights, even as a public safety issue. They were talking rooftop level here, okay? Asking for a reenactment, which was brilliant because, okay, again, I'm a show me person. If you can reenact it and you show me that what you do is the same as what I saw and documented on film, hey, shame on you for denying it for so long and for whatever, and for going over people's heads, okay? But show me. Well, right before the 3rd anniversary, they tried. They announced publicly that 3 Air National Guards, I think it was New York, Michigan, and California, were coming into town to send off flares to show everyone the Phoenix Lights. We can go to the next slide. It was a joke. Not only, and again, the top formation are the true unknowns, the bottom are flares. They tried to make a triangle, was upside down, it fell apart immediately, had huge smoke trails. Again, not one person. And they might have sent off flares, I don't know, to divert attention away, but not one person that I've spoken to that saw the true unknowns describes any of those characteristics. In any rate, that really put a nail in their coffin. I mean, here they had their shot. And again, if you go to the Phoenix Lights Network news page and scroll down, you'll see exactly what they did. And it's really important to note that the Phoenix Lights have never been attempted to be reenacted again, nor have they been explained. And the military and government have never addressed the craft that people saw. It's important to note. Now, if you look at this picture, the first one is that second picture I took 2 months before. That other picture, after 10 o'clock, there were 2 boomerang videos, okay? This one is really impressive. In fact, it was, that's another thing we have on the news page. It was analyzed by a software specialist, and he slowed it down just recently, just a year or 2 ago. And they don't budge. They don't budge. Plus the fact that one of them actually elevates and splits in 2. Flares don't do that, okay? There was another boomerang video after 10 o'clock, was a little haphazard. Never used that. That may have been the flares, okay? But nonetheless, this one was the one that was really attacked for being flares. Mine, on the other hand, not only Dr. Bruce Maccabee, but the air traffic controllers confirmed that what I videotaped was actually over Class B restricted airspace and certainly wasn't flares, okay? Now, fast forward again, 10 years later, suddenly, after the 10th anniversary, we can go to the next picture, by Symington, who had mocked the sighting in 97, comes forward bravely, for whatever reason, to divulge that he actually he witnessed one of these mile-wide craft himself, and that it was definitely not flares. And he's an awarded pilot, military pilot. Definitely wasn't flares. And in his own words, he called it otherworldly. Again, that's the word that was used for years, decades, by countries all over the world.
Sorry, I will just interject here because we're not able to show this video, but what I'll do is I'll link this below so that people can then go and refer to it. That way they get an impression of what we're talking about. But unfortunately, due to copyright, we're unable to show it.
But it's posted on our website if people would like to see it. It's a wonderful report, okay? Then, 2017, other things were happening too. It was very interesting. The Pentagon came out, front page, New York Times, that there was a $22 million funded study by the military and government and the Pentagon, headed by Harry Reid. He was one of the people that were involved with it, of UFOs, which was really a big step forward because they were finally admitting that they were studying them for years before and probably decades before. And then the Navy pilots came forward, the Nimitz Navy pilots, with video showing these tic-tac or lozenge-shaped objects, confirming that there's something going on out there that's real, that cannot be explained, okay? Now, besides that, also suddenly, around the same time, the private pilot, and it's interesting because in the first edition of my book, and it's now in the 4th edition, but the first edition of my, because the story unfolds, I didn't want to write another book. The first book is too important, I'll get to that. But the pilot, I do mention that a pilot calls into Sky Harbor, air traffic controller. This private pilot that called in happened to be, and we can go to the next slide, actor Kurt Russell, which blew me away because if you look at his UK interview, okay, on the Phoenix Lights Network news page, fabulous interview. Not only does he describe that as he was coming into Sky Harbor with his son, Oliver, they have a house, I think he's living with Goldie Hawn, here in Carefree. And Oliver had a date or something with his girlfriend, and he was coming in, and he was the first to notice it, which is also interesting because children were usually the first to notice this V-shaped thing coming towards them on March 13th. And we're so inundated with threat, and fear with Hollywood and the media. We have Dr. Gary Schwartz in the documentary, who's the head of the Consciousness Study Department at the University of Arizona, state, if you're inundated with fear, how are you supposed to react when you see something that you're told is fearful, right? So kids would jump up and down, Independence Day, because Independence Day movie was popular 6 months before. But as it got closer, interestingly, a calmness came over everyone, a connectedness, adults and children alike, to the phenomena that once it passed, they wanted their parents to get in the car and run after it. I mean, it's amazing. We'll get to how it affected people in real time and long term if we may.
Yep.
But one of the things that Kurt Russell also shares is that after they had this sighting and his son told him about these 6 lights, and he said, whoa, I better report this, which he did. They didn't talk about it. They didn't discuss it. They didn't think about it. It just was repressed, which, by the way, I get into this in the book. There was a psychiatrist with his family that was coming up from Tucson, 2 hours south of Phoenix, to a swim meet, and there was a whole car full of people, and he was in the passenger seat and actually looked out his window at this massive craft that was extending on both sides of the giant highway, the main highway between Phoenix and Tucson. They didn't talk about it either. They never talked about it for months. Kurt didn't talk about it for 2 years. He walks in on Goldie looking at a show that's talking about the Phoenix Lights, and he's like, wait, that sounds awfully familiar. And he goes to his log to check, and he said, that was me. I saw that because they talked about a pilot, right? Which is very exciting. So all these things are coming forward, and suddenly the Phoenix Lights is really exploding as a major sighting. And the other thing that, if we can go to the next slide, and as you'll see on the news page, once the mass sighting happened, I pushed my entire professional life aside for 7 years, searching almost frantically for a logical explanation, which I have yet to find 25 years later. I didn't know what to do with this 750-page journal that I had. And I went back to work as chief clinical consultant at the Arizona Heart Institute Wellness and Imaging Center, the heart test. And while I was in my little office in between patients, I pared down the 750 pages to 230 pages. And finally, in 2004, I did a lot of soul searching, and there was so much mis and disinformation out there. And as I mentioned, the official explanation was that it was flares. And it was like, oh my goodness, people have to know that there's much more to the story. And if people want to feed into the flare theory, it gives them comfort, so be it. But I finally came forward in 2004. And it was really scary because I didn't know how it would be perceived. I know when people actually read the book because I had doctors and nurses come up to me thanking me for, I couldn't believe it, that they had sightings when they were children or whatever, and they couldn't make sense of it. So the book, The Phoenix Lights, The Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone, has really helped people transform. But I also, and that was another reason I didn't want to come forward, because I only do things one way. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I try to be as professional and credible as I can. And I've done dozens and dozens of interviews on Travel Channel, History Channel, and Science Channel, and so forth. And this one, which is the most recent, Discovery Plus, for anybody that has Discovery Plus, has a new show called UFO Witness, and it's streaming there now. Episode 5 is about the Phoenix Lights. And I kind of follow it through as a spokesman now for the Phoenix Lights. It's a great episode, and we have a little snippet, which again, we unfortunately can't show today, but it is on the news page on the Phoenix Lights Network website. So I invite people to go there and look. The other thing I wanted to get into, and if you want to show the book cover of the Phoenix Lights, this is the latest edition. This is the 4th edition, and I know it's available in UK Amazon. It's also available in Kindle, which I recommend because the pictures are in color. And I also have links there. I went to great lengths to put links wherever I could so that people could explore if they want. I mean, this has all been from my own heart and pocket. I just want people to look at the data if they would, and it is a choice. Okay, not trying to convince anybody of anything, but the data is out there, and I've added chapters. Again, this is the 4th edition as these things have unfolded, because the first, and I was asked to do a second book. I said the first book is so important. Every word is there for a reason. not only to show how the story unfolded, and I've just told you the tip of the iceberg, but how it affected people as well. Half the book is about this, by the way. Not only in real time and long term, as I mentioned, in real time, a calmness came over everyone. People were in awe, in wonder, curious. There has not been not one credible report in 25 years now of harm, threat, or abduction associated with the Phoenix Lights phenomena. Can't speak about other things, but I can about the Phoenix Lights. If anything, it was quite the opposite. People still tell me to this day, I still get emails and messages on Facebook that people felt blessed that they had the experience. So in real time and then long term, afterwards, even my own husband, he doesn't eat meat anymore. And people change their eating habits. People went into the peace movement, the environmental movement. It wasn't a belief in these phenomena. Whoever did this not only wanted to wake us up to their presence, and I don't know who did this. I mean, you can go through a plethora of interstellar, interdimensional, which is my take because I've seen it disappear in front of me, but where did it go? It still felt like it was there for 3 weeks, actually, after all three disappeared. Time travelers, even our own technology. I mean, some people think there's a runaway society, civilization, that's far more advanced than we are. I don't know. But nonetheless, whoever did this wanted to wake us up to their presence in a very gentle, non-threatening way, as well as wake us up to that we're not alone in the universe. And as I said, it changed people forever. Not only that, but another really interesting aspect for me personally, when I was interviewing witnesses, they also shared with me that they had had near-death experiences as children that was reawakened by the Phoenix Lights mass sighting. And I found that really powerful because I did too. And we won't have time to get into it, but I lay it all out there in the book. Not only did I have a profound, life-changing experience at 8 years old, I thought everybody was psychic and empathic and knew the secret. But it woke me up. It wasn't a belief anymore. It was a knowing that we're not alone. And not only that, but I thought, whoa, could there be a connection between all unexplained phenomena, whether it's near-death experience, out-of-body experience, unexplained aerial phenomena, with a mystical light associated with the experience? And lo and behold, again, when I started looking, I found an abundance of credible data at university level. The Omega Project, which is like a 4-inch thick book by Dr. Kenneth Ring, Dr. John Mack at Harvard, a Pulitzer Prize winning psychiatrist, as well as others, were professing that they, from their analysis of their data, that there was indeed a connection between all unexplained phenomena, not only in the experience itself, which I lay out very simply in the book, is very similar when you really look at the data. It's amazing. Whatever the experience is, unexplained phenomena experience, I started calling them an UP, unexplained phenomena, because they are. The positive transformation, this was what was so important for me to share. The awakening, the enlightenment that happens to an individual that has a true up experience changes their lives forever. The connectedness that they feel for the first time, many, to the universe, to the earth, to each other. We're all connected. And the bottom line is that it's a knowing that we're not alone. So I really get into that in the book and share my own near-death experience, which is really, really amazing. And I have to admit that, and I've just started sharing it during talks because it is what it is. I met 3 beings in glowing white robes above the earth that I have felt have been with me since I was a child, since I was 8 years old, and been my guides. And I go into that in the book as well, because there are many crossroads I've come to, and I've come to trust. I don't hear voices, but I do meditation, and I also give 10 ways if people choose to do this, because you don't have to have an up experience to have this positive transformation, all you need to do is open your mind and your heart and learn about it. You can also have this positive transformation. And from a child, I have felt that these guides or whatever are real and they're out there to help. And whenever, and call it a coincidence if you want, whenever I have a question about something, and the Phoenix Lights was one of them. Okay, I had I had showed finally some of the data to some of my friends who know me, and I said, "Why do I have this? I don't want to do this. This is nothing I would choose to do, but I have this data. How can I just stick it in a drawer?" And they would look at me and say, "Lynne, if anybody can do something credible and professional with this, you can. You've been doing this your whole life with vital health issues." And I actually went out on the balcony, and again, I still was a healthy skeptic. What's going on here? And just searched the heavens and just thought and meditated. Okay, if I'm supposed to do something productive with this, show me the way. Just lead me to what I have to do. I will do the most I can with my own expertise and energy to help. And from that day forward, the puzzle pieces just keep fitting together. It's really bizarre, but it is what it is. And I hope people will pick up the book because there's so much more in there. In fact, there I also added, and that's why I recommend the ebook, because it's a color picture of a photograph that one of my sons took, who was the biggest skeptic of all. He's an attorney, and he said, "Mom, you better not come forward. They're going to find out it's military, and you'll look like an idiot." Until this happened, that confirms that we do go on. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to spoil it, but it is a picture that has been analyzed ad nauseum. It is real, and my mom came through in this picture as clear as can be. 10 years after she passed. Okay, and she was very close with this son. So I'll leave it at that. I'll let people. The other thing, if you want to show the next picture, is that we have a documentary. The Phoenix Lights Beyond Top Secret is the latest edition. Again, that has continued to unfold. Unfortunately, Amazon doesn't sell DVDs anymore. It's only available on streaming. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it for free, I understand. So hopefully people will take a look. This is just a gentle overview. I wanted to get something out there for people not only who have had experiences, but certainly people who haven't, who might just be curious, or either a husband or a wife or whatever, it doesn't want to hear about it, but hear this video with witnesses, with astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who's amazing. His words are so powerful, with children in it, with we have the analysis of the flares so people can see how that was discredited. We also address the threat scenario and how it affects people at a very deep soul level. And that doesn't happen with flares or balloons or Chinese lanterns. Okay, so you have to put that in the mix as well. And my latest adventure, if because I am so passionate about young people, educating young people to the reality of vital health issues, how could I not educate them to the reality of this vital issue? And if you want to show the next slide, this is the Phoenix Lights, UFOs and Crop Circles coloring book. It's a graphic novel activities coloring book for all ages. I wanted to get something out there because I've been working on a curriculum for many, many, many years. It's rough to get this into the classroom, needless to say. And for the 20th anniversary, I wanted to take what I had compiled over 7 years and put it into a kind of a workbook, coloring book for all ages, for teachers to use, for parents to do with their kids, for grandparents to also do with their grandchildren, that has not only the story of the Phoenix Lights sprinkled throughout, but the 10 different crafts that are on the GAP page, GAP, on the Phoenix Lights Network website are there to color. We had a map maker come to Phoenix from Denver and actually to scale from what people described, show these crafts, and they're fabulous. We have 80 crop circles, and I tried to pick the most ornate that couldn't have possibly been man-made, because we know some are man-made, and we talk about that too. The difference between genuine and man-made crop circles. We also have activities that are amazing, word finders and crossword puzzles and sacred geometry and a whole host, and the answers for those of us who are challenged with the answers. And it's a whole host of things. 150 pages for the black and white book and 160 pages with added colored pictures in the color edition. Again, offered on Amazon. They're all offered on Amazon. So I hope people will check them out. And when I go to conferences, I just have to say, because it's hard to visualize this graphic novel activities coloring book, as fabulous as it is. They do show in the color version, you can go inside and take a look. So that's, you can do that. But when I have it in my hand at conferences, I can't keep it in my hand. People are literally grabbing out. I sell out every single time. So it's something that, and we have iconic pictures. I almost forgot. Iconic historical pictures from, we have the UFOs over the Capitol, that picture. We have also the Foo Fighters. That's another thing I didn't even mention. In World War II, these orbs, the same exact thing. Dr. Richard Haynes, who was the head of started NARCAP for thousands of pilot reports. I consulted with him, and he said that my data is very similar to what they called Foo Fighters. These balls, it's fire in French. That each side thought the other side had this advanced technology, and it wasn't until spy technology, and it wasn't until after the war, World War II, that Japan and Germany and the U.S. tried to study and find out who had these, and nobody could find out. So we have a picture, an actual picture of a plane with Foo Fighters around it. And by the way, in the documentary, if you go to Amazon Prime and watch that edition, at the very end, we have a 93-year-young French pilot who witnessed these Foo Fighters. And he tells his story, which is pretty profound, when he tried to report it. Okay. So all these things are available, and the website, the Phoenix Lights Network website. It's packed with information to explore and to consider. And again, it's just there for the public to educate, to raise their awareness. And all these are the book and the documentary and the graphic novel and the website. So you can learn what really happened with the Phoenix Lights.
Dr. Kitei, thank you so much. And guys, everything we've talked about that has a link, possible link, whether it's the videos that we weren't able to show in the presentation, will be linked below. But more importantly, the Phoenix Lights Network website will be the top link, and I cannot state this enough. You must go and take a look at it. All through the news section, as Dr. Kitei said, is absolutely phenomenal. The depth and detail in the work, analysis, and everything is incredible. So please go and check that out. But finally, all I really need to do is say thank you so much, Dr. Kitei. That is an absolutely incredible presentation. It was an honor to have you here. And I think it was almost a blessing that the audio was wrong, because no one wants to hear from me. They just want to hear from you. And it was fantastic. So thank you so much.
Oh, I appreciate being here so much and having your audience understand that there's a lot more to the story of the Phoenix Lights. And I always say, and if you want to do the last slide there, I always tell people, and it's a double entendre. Now you guys understand. Keep looking up.
So guys, thank you so much for watching. Please join me again on the next one. And like I said, check those links below. So we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.